They say when something's wrong, your body knows it before your brain does. That night, I felt it in my ribs, a heaviness I couldn't name, like a storm rolling in behind my eyes. Outside my apartment in Omaha, the snow was falling hard, thick sheets pelting the windows like little fists. The streets below were a blur of white and amber, streetlights swallowed by the blizzard. Inside, my space was dim and warm, but that didn't help much. I was still at the kitchen table, papers spread out like a battlefield. Legal contracts, tenant disputes, the usual. A rerun of one of those true crime shows played in the background. Something about a son manipulating his aging mother out of her estate. I muted it after 10 minutes. I hadn't spoken to Grandma in nearly a year. Not because I didn't want to, but because the last time I did, it turned into a shouting match about the house, the old one in Broken Bow. She wanted to keep it. I told her it was crumbling. She called me ungrateful. I called her stubborn. Then silence. At 10:52 p.m., my phone rang. The screen read, "Unknown caller." I almost let it go to voicemail. Something inside me, maybe guilt, maybe instinct, pushed my hand forward. "Hello?" A pause. Then a deep voice, professional but heavy. "This is Deputy Miles from Valentine PD. We've found your grandmother outside the McCoyle gas station. She was barefoot, no coat. You're listed as her emergency contact." I stood up so fast my chair screeched against the tile. "Is she okay?" "She's alive," he said. "But it's bad. You might want to come soon." I didn't pack. I didn't even change. I grabbed my parka, slipped on boots, stuffed my wallet and charger in a bag, and left. No hesitation, just movement. The roads were a nightmare. Blizzard warnings had been flashing on the weather app all day, and now I was living in one. Visibility dropped to near zero. My windshield wipers fought ice like they were battling for their lives. Every half mile, my SUV groaned beneath me, tires sliding over black ice. I white-knuckled the steering wheel, knuckles blanched, jaw tight. Somewhere around Columbus, I whispered to myself, "You're not too late. You're not too late." Over and over. Every mile I drove was another layer peeled back. Guilt I'd buried, resentment I pretended didn't exist. I thought about the last voicemail she left months ago, the one I never returned. "Just wanted to say hello. I made cinnamon rolls. Call me if you feel like it." I hadn't felt like it. Halfway through the drive, my gas light came on. I cursed under my breath, pulled off at a tiny station that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 80s. The clerk, a teenager with earbuds in, didn't say a word. I topped off, used the bathroom, and kept moving. They say most elder abuse goes unnoticed until it's too late. The line from the true crime show echoed in my head like a siren. I never thought I'd be part of that statistic. I wasn't crying. Not yet. But something in my chest cracked every time the snow blinded me and I had to slow down to a crawl. By the time I pulled into Valentine, the clock on my dash read 2:13 a.m. The town was asleep, buried in snow. I pulled into the gas station, headlights sweeping across the empty lot. And then I saw her. Between the trash bin and the soda machine, a figure crouched, shaking violently. A silver head bowed low. No shoes. I killed the engine, leapt out, my boots crunching through the powder. "Grandma?" She didn't respond at first, just rocked slightly, her nightgown stuck to her skin with frost. Her lips were cracked, cheeks raw. I knelt, peeled off my coat, and wrapped it around her shoulders. "It's me, Grandma. It's Makena." "I'm here." She blinked slowly, then flinched like I might vanish. "You came. I didn't think anyone would." "I'm here," I said again, more for myself than her. She tried to stand but winced. I wrapped an arm around her. "We're going to the hospital." As I lifted her, she whispered something that would stick in my brain like splinters. "They took the house, Makena. And then they locked me out." I got her in the car, cranked the heat, drove with one hand while holding her other. She didn't say much, just shivered, staring out the window at the nothingness. At the ER, the nurse looked up from her screen and frowned. "She's not responsive," I said. "She's hypothermic. You need to take her now." They did. They wheeled her back. I followed. hard in my throat, until another nurse blocked my path. Sorry, only the legal guardian can make treatment decisions. I'm her granddaughter, I said. She checked the tablet. Her records list Rin Blackwood as the primary contact. I froze. My uncle, her son, the same man who hadn't called, the one who let her end up in the snow. My voice was low, but it vibrated. He's the reason she's here. I'm sorry, the nurse said, eyes dropping. Policy. I didn't yell, didn't scream. I just walked back to the waiting area and sat down hard. Across the glass, I could see her on the hospital bed. Pale, small, tubes and wires snaking around her. My hands shook. Not from the cold, from the uselessness. I remembered her teaching me how to tie my shoes in this very town. Her hands were always warm back then, steady. I used to think she could solve anything. Now, she couldn't even sign her own name. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. 3% battery. I opened the Notes app. If anything happens to her tonight, they'll have to go through me. Across the room, her eyes fluttered open. Just barely. She looked at me, directly. Like she was seeing me, really seeing me, for the first time in years. She didn't smile, didn't speak, but her gaze said it all. Help me. She looked like she was fading, and all I had was fury. The hallway outside the emergency room felt colder than the snowstorm I had just driven through. My coat was damp, my boots still tracked slush, but none of that matched the chill I felt standing at the hospital intake counter. The nurse behind the desk barely looked up. Her fingers clacked across the keyboard, rhythm too practiced, too routine. I'm here for Marlo Bennington. I'm her granddaughter, I said, trying to sound composed. Are you listed as next of kin? She asked without blinking. I should be. I've handled her pharmacy refills for years. She turned the monitor slightly, squinting. Looks like the primary contact is Rin Blackwood, legal guardian. My stomach clenched. He's the one who left her out there, in the snow. The nurse's expression shifted slightly, like she'd heard worse. I'm sorry, ma'am. Without authorization, you can't make medical decisions. Can I at least see her chart, her vitals? I'm not allowed to show you that. Of course not. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through old texts from Grandma. Nothing useful. I tried calling Rin, straight to voicemail. I left a message anyway. You made yourself guardian just to lock her out. You don't get to do that and vanish. This is on you. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just sat down in the corner, far from the heater vent, arms crossed, hands twitching. I stared at the wall. That was when it hit me. I had no power here. None. The woman I loved more than anyone was behind those double doors, and I couldn't sign a consent form, couldn't speak for her, couldn't even sit beside her. I used to fill her prescriptions, make her coffee when her arthritis flared up, reset her Wi-Fi. Now I was a stranger in the eyes of a system that only valued paperwork. When the nurse disappeared behind the double doors, I slipped outside and walked to my car. Snow had crusted over the windshield again. I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel but going nowhere. I opened the glove compartment, dug around for any legal paperwork, maybe an old power of attorney, something, anything. But it was just old receipts and a half-used pack of gum. I tried logging into the healthcare portal we once set up together. Password rejected. Reset link sent to an email I didn't recognize. A tap on the window startled me. A hospital administrator stood there with a clipboard. I rolled down the window halfway. Ms. Serrano? That's me? I just wanted to inform you. There's a temporary suspension flag on your grandmother's insurance account. I blinked. What does that mean? Someone placed a guardianship-triggered hold. It usually happens during estate or care disputes. I laughed once, bitter. We can't even look at her records because someone who left her to die says it's for her own good? He gave a tight, bureaucratic smile. I know it seems unfair, but... Unfair? I cut him off. She nearly froze to death on a sidewalk and still can't sign her own name. And I'm the one locked out? He nodded, awkwardly, then walked away. I opened my notes app and started typing. Every person I'd spoken to, every refusal, every excuse, names, timestamps, room numbers. I wasn't going to forget this. I wasn't going to let them make it disappear. Back inside, the waiting room lights had dimmed slightly. A nurse passed by with a tray of coffee, and I stood up, ready to ask again. But before I could, I spotted someone at the far end of the hallway. Veronica, Rin's wife. Perfect hair, tailored coat, heels clicking against the floor like a metronome. She moved with purpose. She didn't see me until she was 5 feet away. Veronica. She flinched, recovered. Makena. You look unbothered. I'm just here to handle things. Let's not make this messier than it already is. Messier? I stepped closer. Did he tell you? That she was in the snow, alone, freezing? Her lips tightened. This isn't the place. No, but it sure seems to be where people show up after he's done with them. She didn't respond, just turned and handed papers to the nurse. What is that? I asked. Transfer authorization. She'll be moved to Fairwood Hills Rehab by tomorrow morning. I stared at her. You're not just moving her, you're erasing her. Makena. And me. She put her pen down slowly. If you cause any more disruptions, you'll be removed from the premises. That wasn't a suggestion. Security had already taken notice. One guard watched from near the vending machines. I walked away. Not quickly, not dramatically, just deliberately. My breath fogged the glass door as I pushed it open and stepped into the cold again. Outside, I stood by the car and let the wind bite at my skin. It grounded me. Reminded me this wasn't just about one bad man. This was about a system, a process, built to silence people like Grandma, and now it was trying to silence me too. Back in the driver's seat, I pulled out my notebook. I wrote down, Veronica Blackwood, signed transfer order, hospital contact, admin, flagged insurance hold, attempted access, blocked, healthcare portal, locked. I took out my phone and snapped photos of every hallway sign, every posted nameplate, every clock I passed, all time-stamped. Buried in paperwork was the kind of truth no one wanted to hear, but I wasn't letting it drown. Not this time. I stared at the dashboard for a long minute. The digital clock read 4:27 a.m. I called a number I hadn't used in years, a legal clinic I interned with during my second year of law school. The voicemail picked up. This is Makena Serrano. I need help with an elder abuse guardianship case. I have documentation, video evidence, and medical contradictions. Please call me back. I won't wait long. I ended the call, tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. I glanced through the windshield. The snow was still coming down, soft now, but relentless. Grandma, I whispered into the dark, I'm not leaving you in their hands. Not again. I hadn't set foot on her porch in nearly a year, not since the last time we argued. Me begging her to consider assisted living, her insisting the house had roots longer than mine. But this time, I wasn't here to argue. I was here to find answers. The siding looked newer, too new, like someone had pressure-washed away the decades. The curtains were drawn, but I could see just enough to notice they weren't the dusty florals she used to insist gave character to the place. These were sterile, beige department store replacements. I stepped around the side yard, boots crunching lightly over frozen gravel. The air smelled clean in that faintly chemical way that winter sometimes does when it's covering up decay. The wind cut through my jacket, but I kept walking, eyes scanning. Then I saw it. The flower bed under the kitchen window, the one where we'd planted daffodils every spring for as long as I could remember, was gone. Not overgrown, not wilting, gone. The soil had been overturned, dug up like someone was burying evidence. I knelt slowly, touching the disturbed earth. My glove brushed against something. A fragment of a gardening tag, faded letters spelling out golden harvest. I said nothing. I just pressed my palm flat to the cold soil. They didn't just remove the flowers, I whispered, throat tightening. They erased her history. Our history. From across the fence, a figure moved. Mrs. Callahan, the neighbor who used to bring over lemon bars on Sundays, waved. But it was brief, hesitant. Her eyes darted away before I could wave back. Something wasn't right, and I was done pretending otherwise. That night, back at the motel, I pulled out my old file box and sat cross-legged on the carpet. There it was, folded but still intact. Grandma's 2021 will, signed in her unmistakable, looping script. I had scanned it then, thinking I was being overly cautious. Now, I thanked my past self. The will left the house to me, simple, clean, final. But when I searched the county records online, my chest hollowed out. New documents had been filed. Dated January 2023, transferring full ownership of the property to Rin. I opened the scanned copy of the 2023 will, the one Veronica had forwarded to the hospital for transparency. The signature didn't match, not even close. Grandma's usual handwriting curved like gentle hills. This one was jagged, forced, inconsistent in pressure. I laid the two documents side by side and circled the differences. Tail lengths, slant angles, ink flow. I took photos of everything. Sent them to Caitlin, a former law school friend now working at an elder law nonprofit in Denver. Attached a message. Need help verifying signature authenticity. Family dispute. It's bad. Then I sat back and let the silence stretch out. If she was in her right mind, I said out loud, why would she change everything without telling me? And if she wasn't, who convinced her to? I pulled out my journal and turned to a fresh page. I wrote across the top in block letters. Things they've taken. Then I made a list. Her voice. Those flowers. Her space. Her right to say no. I kept the pen moving. The light in her kitchen window. The smell of cinnamon in spring. My place beside her. And then, I closed the journal and lay on the motel bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning its slow, repetitive rhythm. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just unraveled in silence. I remembered a moment, maybe 3 years ago, when I showed up unannounced on a Saturday with takeout and cheap wine. Grandma had smiled, surprised but happy. You're the only one who visits just because, she'd said. Not because you want something. I hadn't realized then how much that meant. Now, it echoed like a drumbeat I couldn't shut off. I wondered whether the change in the will had come from some misplaced guilt, hers, not mine, or worse, from someone convincing her that I didn't care, that I had left her behind. The older I got, the more I saw how easily people could be manipulated, especially when they were scared, tired, and alone. I opened my laptop and reread an old quote I'd saved once from Maya Angelou. There's a world of difference between truth and facts. Facts can obscure the truth. The fact said she signed it. The truth? It was still buried somewhere. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. Tomorrow, I'd go to the courthouse. I didn't know exactly what I'd find, but I had to start somewhere. They took her house. They took her voice. But I still have the truth. And I'm not done yet. I got up to turn off the light when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. No name. The message was short. No punctuation. Stop digging. I stared at it for a long time, the glow of the screen lighting up the edge of the motel's chipped nightstand. My thumb hovered over the delete button. Then I took a screenshot instead. By 7:45 a.m., I was parked outside the Custer County Courthouse, hands gripping a lukewarm travel mug I hadn't sipped from. I didn't come here hoping for miracles. I came to start ripping away the layers of paperwork that had been used to smother my grandmother's life. The clerk behind the records desk didn't look up when I approached. Gray cardigan, glasses on a chain. Her hands moved efficiently over the keyboard. Good morning, I said, placing my ID on the counter. I need access to the guardianship and property transfer documents for Marlo Bennington. She glanced at the screen, then at me. Are you party to the case? I'm her granddaughter. She's in the hospital. The documents affect her care, her home, everything. The woman's voice didn't change tone. These are sealed due to active family proceedings. I can't open them unless you're listed on the legal record. I tried to keep calm. I'm listed on her 2021 will. She left the house to me. That record should matter. If your name isn't on the current file, she said with that same bland detachment, I can't help you. My jaw tightened. I opened my mouth to push further when I heard a familiar voice, arrogant, dismissive, cut through the room. Well, didn't expect to see you here, Makena. Ryan, in a blazer that probably cost more than I paid in rent that month, and beside him, a man I recognized from state bar newsletters, his attorney, Miles Crane. Rins smirked. Always the emotional one. Never could quite handle the legal side of things, could you? I took a breath. Emotions don't erase facts, especially forged ones. The clerk glanced between us, visibly uneasy. Miles shifted his weight. Rin leaned in, voice low but pointed. You're digging yourself into a corner you won't get out of. I didn't blink. I stepped back, collected my ID, and walked away without another word. I didn't slam the door. I didn't need to. The fire under my ribs did the shouting for me. The local Department of Aging Services was 2 blocks away. It looked more like a converted post office than a government office, one of those places where the waiting chairs were all mismatched and the carpet didn't quite reach the walls. Inside, I found Lisa, mid-40s, stretched thin, smarter than she let on. She wore tired eyes and a badge that had seen better days. I'm Makena Serrano, I began. I need to talk to someone about a report, maybe an old one, on my grandmother, Marlo Bennington. She sat up straighter. We had a file, anonymous report filed 3 months ago, but it was withdrawn. Withdrawn? Lisa tapped keys, pulled up a form. Yeah, opened and closed in under 24 hours. Who filed it? I asked. It was anonymous, she said, but the report said the son was controlling her meds, isolating her, keeping her from visitors. My hands curled. That's exactly what happened. She nodded slowly. You're not wrong, but it was withdrawn the next day. We've got a withdrawal signature. She turned the monitor toward me. I leaned in. It was scanned, not inked. The signature read, Marlo Bennington. I stared at it. She was still able to sign? Lisa didn't answer. She didn't have to. Of course she would, I muttered. That's what abuse does. Makes you protect the person hurting you. Lisa hesitated, then clicked a few buttons. I can print you a redacted copy, date and time of submission and withdrawal. But that's all I'm legally allowed to share. It's enough, I said. She slid the paper across the desk. I folded it carefully, placed it in my coat pocket. Lisa looked me in the eye. Keep fighting. People like you usually stop when it gets this messy. I'm not most people. The car was quiet when I climbed back in. The vents blew warm air, but it didn't reach my bones. I sat there, staring out the windshield, rain beginning to speckle the glass. And then I broke. Not loud, not wild, just silent tears, slipping down like they'd been waiting for permission. I kept them short, controlled. Then I wiped my face and pulled out my journal. Things they've taken. Her right to be afraid, her voice, her ability to say no without consequence. I flipped a few pages. Reread the quote I had scribbled in Grandma's handwriting years ago. If you whisper too long, you forget how to shout. I wasn't whispering anymore. Back on my laptop, I opened a draft email. Subject: Urgent. Elder abuse in progress. Legal cover-up. Suspected. To info@elderjusticealliance.org. I listed dates, people, departments, attached the redacted report, included photos of her in the ER. I hovered over send, but I didn't click. Not yet. I needed one more piece, one more undeniable truth. Later that evening, back at the motel, I slid my keycard through the reader. The light turned green, and the door creaked open. On the floor just inside was a padded envelope. No postage, no name. I froze. Picked it up gently. Inside was a USB drive and a single sheet of paper. The note said, "You're not wrong, but you'll need more than truth. You'll need proof." I turned the USB in my palm, heart thudding. No return address, no signature. But someone was watching. And someone, somewhere, wanted this fight to keep going. The USB drive was light, ordinary, but the weight it carried sat in my hand like a weapon I wasn't sure how to use. I locked the motel door behind me, pulled the blackout curtains tight, and placed the drive into the old laptop I kept for emergencies. No cloud sync, no auto backups, just me, the machine, and whatever secret someone had slid under my door. The folder that popped up was named Marlo Footage. Only one video inside. Timestamp, 11 days before the gas station. I clicked play. At first, just the living room. The angle was low, static, too steady for a handheld. It took me a second to realize it was coming from the vase on the mantel. A gift I'd given her years ago, now transformed into a witness. Grandma sat at the dining table, her hands trembling slightly as she flipped through some papers. She was murmuring something under her breath, but the mic didn't catch it. The front door opened. Rin entered. His voice was sharp before his face even appeared. "This house doesn't manage itself, Mother. You know that. Now stop stalling." He tossed a stack of documents in front of her. "Just sign." She tried to pick up the pen with her right hand, but it slipped. She winced. He didn't even pause. "Left hand, then. Let's not pretend this is hard." He grabbed her wrist, forced the pen into her weaker hand, and pressed it to the signature line. She didn't protest, just obeyed. My breath caught. I rewound, watched it again, slower, her fingers flailing, his hand firm, the signature jagged. I didn't expect to see her abused in 480p, but there she was, caught in quiet violence. I copied the file 3 times, onto a second drive, into an encrypted folder, and onto an SD card I slid under the motel mattress. Then I emailed it to Caitlin, my old colleague. Subject line: "Not hearsay anymore." No message body, just the file. By noon, I had an appointment with Dr. Hellman, Grandma's primary physician for nearly 15 years. I drove across town, parked by the curb, and walked in without calling ahead. I knew I was pushing boundaries. I didn't care. He greeted me with a tired smile. "Makena, I heard what happened. I'm sorry." I pulled out a printed copy of the 2023 will and laid it on the counter. "Can you tell me if this signature looks right to you?" He took his glasses off, leaned in, and frowned. "This was signed in January?" "January 18th. He opened his patient portal, typed in a few notes, then turned the screen toward me. "Your grandmother fractured her right wrist in early December. She had a soft cast until mid-February." I felt my stomach sink. She couldn't write with her dominant hand? She couldn't hold a pen without pain. And she wasn't coordinated with her left. I remember her joking, "Now I can't even sign checks without hurting myself." "Would you be willing to write that down?" He paused, then nodded. "Off the record, for now." But yes. I left with a printed note on clinic letterhead, date-stamped and signed by him. It wasn't just a contradiction. It was a dagger. Facts were facts. But when stitched to timelines, they became weapons. Back at the motel, I spread everything across the bed. The original will from 2021. The 2023 forgery. The footage. The physician's statement. The frozen insurance record. The silenced report from aging services. I opened a manila folder, started labeling tabs, scanned each document, named the files carefully. I taped sticky notes to the wall, forming a map. Red ink for contradictions, blue for connections, names, dates, motions, silence. Then I called Lisa. If I had video evidence, clear as day, would APS reopen a closed case? She was quiet for a beat. "If it's what I think it is, yes." I ended the call, opened my email, and began writing again. Subject: Marlo Bennington. Evidence: submission attachments, 6 files. Body: attached are files supporting elder abuse concerns under guardianship, seeking formal review. But I didn't hit send, not yet. I needed one more day, one more move. I turned off the light, packed up the wall of notes, stuffed the file folder into my suitcase. The laptop was zipped into the side pocket. As I zipped my coat, ready to head for the courthouse the next morning, I heard it. 3 sharp knocks. I froze. A voice came through the door, male, calm, like he wasn't in a hurry. "Ms. Serrano, someone from your family's been asking about you." I grabbed the flash drive from the nightstand and slid it into my coat pocket. I didn't open the door. I waited, breath held, listening to footsteps fade. I peeked through the blinds. Nothing. Whoever it was had vanished as quickly as they'd come, but the tension in my neck didn't go anywhere. By noon, I was seated at the tiny motel table, laptop open, folders splayed out like battle plans. The knock had been a warning. This was their second one. The first came at 9:18 that morning. I'd just gotten out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, when there was a firm knock. I opened it halfway. A man in a gray parka and slacks stood there, holding a white envelope. Makena Serrano? Yes. Thomas Galloway. I'm a process server. This is for you. He handed me the envelope, didn't even blink. You've been served. Have a good day. I didn't say a word, just nodded and shut the door. Inside the envelope, notice of cease and desist, pre-litigation action. Rin's law firm, Crane Dobb, accused me of defamation, harassment, and unlawful intrusion into protected medical affairs. In bold letters, any continued actions may result in civil litigation. The letter was signed by Veronica's cousin, Ezra Dobb, with his name printed in heavy font. A subtle message. We're not bluffing. I laughed once, sharp, humorless, then turned on my phone camera and read the letter aloud, narrating each claim, time-stamping the video, not for social media, for myself, for the case file. They're not just slamming doors shut, I murmured. They're building walls out of lawsuits. After uploading the video to an encrypted drive, I slipped on my coat and headed to Aging Services. Lisa met me with a look that said, not surprised. We sat in her cramped office, still stacked with boxes from what she called budget relocation. You're back early, she said. They sent a cease and desist, I replied, signed by family. She sighed. That tracks. I need more information on Grandma's medical access records. I think something's being buried. She didn't ask for justification, just spun her monitor and began typing. Her chart shows oversight by Dr. Ray Lowenstein. She frowned. I don't know that name. He isn't her physician. That's Dr. Hellman. Yeah, I know Hellman, Lisa said. Lowenstein hasn't worked with our elder care programs in, I don't think ever. We clicked through notes. His listed phone number directed to a voicemail-only service with no receptionist, no clinic address. This isn't just shady, I said. It's a ghost. Lisa turned slowly. You think they falsified her medical supervision? I think they didn't want anyone digging through her records, and now I want them reopened. She nodded once, decisively. I'll file a formal flag with the Office of Adult Protective Services. Thank you. I stood. Someone went to a lot of trouble to make sure no one looked too closely. That's exactly why I will. This stopped being about care a long time ago, she said softly. Now it's about control. And control always leaves fingerprints, I added. Back at the motel, I worked silently. It felt like a trial brief, but one no judge had yet seen. I titled it, Marlo Bennington, Full Timeline of Abuse and Fraud. Included sections. Footage from Vase camera. Photos of original versus. Forged will. Medical notes from Dr. Hellman. Silenced abuse report and date of withdrawal. Suspicious listing of Dr. Ray Lowenstein. Timeline of guardianship transfer. Cease and desist letter. As retaliation evidence. I used color-coded flags. Green for verified documents, red for questionable items, yellow for missing links. Then I called Caitlin at the nonprofit. She didn't answer, so I left a message. It's escalating. They've lawyered up and tried to scare me off. But I'm not going anywhere. Next, I dialed Lisa. Would APS consider a video submission as grounds to reopen an abuse case? She was quiet. If it's as clear as you said, then yes. Expect a file in the morning. I opened my email, drafted. Subject, Marlo Bennington. Evidence submission. To State Ombudsman apps.gov. Attachments, video footage, timeline, signed statement from physician, withdrawal scan, medical listing fraud. I stared at the send button. Then I closed the laptop. One more day, just one more layer. At 11:37 p.m., my burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then picked up. Makena? It was Lisa. Her voice was low. Yeah? I just found something, buried in her online medical portal, a scanned note. What kind of note? It says she revoked her healthcare proxy. What? I stood. The signature is digital, not scanned. And the date? Don't say it. During her hospital stay, the same day she was sedated. My throat tightened. She couldn't have signed anything. She couldn't even keep her eyes open. I know. I'm logging it for the file. I sat down slowly on the bed, the walls of the room tightening around me. The silence wasn't legal. It was weaponized. I had barely slept, but the adrenaline kept me moving. The envelope still sat on the motel dresser, the cease and desist, now just another brick in the wall I planned to bring down. But before I could go public, I needed a final connection. The money. Riverstone Bank was a small building off Main, tucked between a barber shop and a dentist's office. It hadn't changed much since the early 2000s, down to the fake plant in the corner and the slightly yellowed linoleum. Mrs. Serrano, the branch manager, Mr. Delaney, greeted me cautiously. How can I help? I slid the 2021 power of attorney across the desk. I need to review recent account activity for Marlo Bennington. I'm still her designated POA. No official revocation was filed. He looked at the paper, then at me. Just a moment. I waited as he typed, the keys clicking in a soft rhythm. After a beat, he frowned. There was a large transfer, he said, $120,000, made January 19th. My breath slowed. To where? He turned the monitor slightly. Heritage Management, LLC. I stared at it. Who owns that? He hesitated. We don't typically disclose recipient information, but I recognize the name. It's tied to Rin Blackwood. He's a client here too. I closed my eyes briefly. Was the transfer authorized in person? He shook his head. Mobile verification. She doesn't even own a smartphone, and she had a cast on her hand. He blinked. Then I can't explain it. I leaned forward. Print the transaction. I'll sign whatever release you need. Outside, my fingers trembled slightly, but not from cold. The heat in my car blasted my face, yet I still felt frozen. They didn't just forge her signature, they forged her entire digital presence. That evening, I changed. Black dress, low heels, hair pulled back. Nothing flashy, just enough to blend in. I'd heard through a former client that Rin's firm was hosting a charity gala downtown. An opportunity for networking, handshakes, press photos, a place where reputations were curated, not questioned. I walked through the glass doors like I belonged. No one asked who I was. The venue buzzed with money. Men in tailored suits, women in jewel tones, the scent of perfume and ego mixing in the air. I spotted Veronica across the room near the bar, laughing with a group of donors. I made my way closer, not too obvious, but not hiding either. Just behind her, a man with a drink in each hand leaned in and said, too loudly, Rin really played this whole thing out, didn't he? Told me she wouldn't make it past winter. Cold, but smart. The room didn't stop, but Veronica did. Her laugh cut short. Her eyes darted past him and landed right on me. I smiled. Did he say that before or after he forged her signature? The words landed like glass hitting tile. Sharp, loud, impossible to ignore. Kent, the broker, turned red. Whoa, what the hell is this? Veronica stepped back. Makena, this isn't the time. No, I said. The time passed when you both stood by while she was discarded like trash. Whispers rippled. Eyes turned. I didn't care. Veronica stammered something under her breath and walked away, heels clacking harder now. I didn't chase. I didn't need to. I walked out the front doors knowing the damage was already done. Back in my motel room, I didn't bother taking off the dress. I laid out every piece of evidence I had. Bank transfer, doctor's statement, video footage, forged will, cease and desist letter, falsified medical contact. I opened a blank document, started typing. To whom it may concern at the Nebraska Tribune. I listed everything. Dates, screenshots, document scans, patterns, contradictions. I included a Google Drive link to redacted files. Then I opened a new tab, Reddit, anonymous account, title, Local Elder Abuse Cover-Up. Lincoln lawyer's family under fire. I uploaded stills, redacted receipts, a clip from the video, just enough to show truth without breaking any laws. If they want to weaponize shame, I whispered, let's show them what truth looks like when it's no longer polite. My phone buzzed at 1:03 a.m., a Reddit thread, dozens of comments. They weren't mine. Someone had already leaked it. Screenshots I had never posted. My words, my files. I stared at the screen. I didn't light the match, I whispered. But someone just threw it into a room full of gasoline. My phone buzzed at 6:12 a.m., vibrating against the cheap motel nightstand like it was demanding attention. I blinked the sleep from my eyes, reached over, and picked it up. There were 3 missed calls, all from unknown numbers, and one text that just said, "It's happening." I opened Reddit. The post had already hit the front page of Our Nebraska News. Headline, Local Lawyer Tied to Elder Abuse Allegations. Leaked Footage Raises Alarms. There were stills from the video I'd uploaded. Blurred, yes, but unmistakably Rin, towering over Grandma's frail frame, forcing her hand across the signature line. The comments were already flooding in. Dozens, then hundreds. Some users were speculating about political donations, legal fraud, elder exploitation rings. Others were asking for names. Screenshots of Rin's law firm's Yelp reviews were already being bombed with 1-star posts. Wouldn't trust them with my neighbor's hamster. I turned on the TV. Local news was already on it. A Lincoln law firm is under fire this morning following explosive allegations surrounding the treatment of an elderly woman, Marlo Bennington. Below it, they showed stills, one from the Vase camera, another from the bank transfer documents someone had apparently leaked alongside it. Rin's firm released a press statement. This is a malicious attempt to defame an honorable attorney. All visual evidence appears digitally manipulated. I stared at the screen, heart thudding. You can deny your voice, I said softly, but you can't deny your face when it's screaming at your mother. I dressed in silence. Black slacks, buttoned blouse, boots that meant business. I packed my file folder, zipped my coat, and walked straight past the camera crews now stationed near the front of the motel. "Ms. Serrano!" someone shouted. "Do you have a statement?" I didn't stop walking, but I did speak. My grandmother didn't fall through the cracks. She was pushed. I have proof. At the courthouse, I filed the protective petition with APS and the elder court in person. The clerk didn't blink when she saw my name. She just nodded, filed the paperwork, and told me a judge would review it within the hour. I didn't sit down. I waited standing. When the bailiff called my name, I followed him into a small courtroom where the judge sat already reviewing part of my packet. "Ms. Serrano," he said, "you've submitted a request for immediate guardianship suspension and protective review?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied, "and I have the evidence with me." The clerk rolled in a monitor. I handed over the flash drive. The judge inserted it. Everyone in the room turned to the screen as the video played. The silence was total. Then came the footage, Rin's voice rising, his hand grabbing Grandma's, the pen being shoved into her fingers, the reluctant scrawl. Rin's attorney stood up. "Your Honor, this was recorded without consent." "It's a privacy violation. It's a cry for help," I interrupted. The judge raised a hand. "Overruled. Sit down." The clip ended. The room didn't move. Then from the back of the courtroom, a voice cut through the stillness. "I can verify the abuse." I turned. Elspeth Makena stood, clutching her handbag like armor. "I'm her neighbor. I saw him shove her out into the snowstorm. I heard him threaten her. I've been afraid to say anything, but fear isn't a good excuse anymore." The judge leaned forward. "You're willing to submit a written affidavit?" "I already brought one," she said, handing it to the bailiff. The judge scanned it, eyes narrowing. "This court grants a temporary protective order for Marlo Bennington. All power of attorney and financial control by Rin Blackwood is immediately suspended pending further investigation." I exhaled. Rin, sitting just 2 rows behind me, shot to his feet. "You little liar!" he bellowed. "You manipulated everything! This whole circus is your fault!" Bailiffs moved fast, grabbing his arms before he could take another step. "You don't even visit for years!" he screamed. "And now you think you're the hero?" I didn't respond. I didn't flinch. I just looked at the judge. The judge banged his gavel once. "Mr. Blackwood, sit down or be held in contempt." Veronica, seated next to him, didn't say a word. She didn't move. Her hands stayed folded in her lap, eyes cast downward like she was somewhere else entirely. Outside, the cameras were waiting. I stepped down the courthouse stairs into a wall of microphones. Makena, what's your response to Mr. Blackwood's outburst? This isn't revenge, I said. This is accountability. One reporter pushed closer. Why didn't you come forward sooner? I paused. Because women are taught to be polite, I said. But polite doesn't protect people. No one had anything else to ask. Or maybe they just needed a moment to process what they'd seen. Either way, I turned and walked away. Later that night, back at the motel, I was scrolling through emails when I saw the message request. From Veronica. There's more. Meet me tomorrow. I'll bring the real contract. I stared at it for a long time. Then I closed the laptop. We met behind a church, Veronica and I. The parking lot was nearly empty, shaded by bare-limbed trees and a steeple that hadn't chimed in years. It was cold enough for her breath to linger in the air, though she didn't seem to notice. She lit a cigarette with shaking hands. I thought you quit, I said. She exhaled hard. I did. Then I married a man who made me forget why. She pulled a file folder from her coat and held it out like it was radioactive. It was labeled in block letters. Marlowe. Originals. I took it and flipped it open right there, flipping past the top page to find printed emails between Rin and a company I'd never heard of. The email headers matched up with fake medical notes in Marlowe's chart. Another page showed a power of attorney revocation, typed, not signed by hand. He kept this in a locked folder on a flash drive, Veronica said. I found it when he left the office to scream at the reporters. You're doing the right thing, I said, though I didn't mean it as praise. But it's not redemption, it's damage control. She nodded slowly. I know, but if it helps undo even a little of what he did, that's something. I closed the folder and walked away without another word. Later, back at the motel, I dug through my bag and pulled out the old flip phone. I'd been carrying it around for days, Grandma's ancient clamshell phone that barely held a charge and was older than some of my co-workers. I found the adapter in my laptop case, plugged it in, and waited. The screen flickered, then mounted. I opened a buried folder, and there it was. A single voice file titled, Do Not Delete. I clicked play. It was scratchy. She must have recorded it herself, holding the phone at arm's length, her breath echoing off the microphone. If they say I signed anything, I didn't. If they say I agreed, I didn't. He said if I didn't play along, I'd never see Makena again. No tears in her voice, just fear and love. I wrote it out by hand, every word. Then I emailed the transcription and file to the judge from our last hearing, to APS, and to Caitlin. Then I closed the laptop and held the phone to my chest. She still believed in me. And now I had her voice. The next morning, I didn't shower, I didn't change. I went straight to Grandma's house. Rin was outside, tossing boxes into a moving truck like he was packing up guilt. When he saw me, his face didn't even twitch. You shouldn't be here, he said. You say that every time. Yet, here I am. He tossed another box in. Whatever you're hoping to find, it's gone, like your place in this family. I didn't argue. I walked around the side of the house, to the back kitchen window. It still had the loose frame I used to sneak cookies through when I was 12. I knew what I was looking for. I reached into the drawer beneath the old wall-mounted phone, Grandma's planner. I flipped to the back cover and found it, folded tightly, but still legible. A single sheet of lined paper with Grandma's careful handwriting. I do not agree to leave my home. I do not consent to any transfer of property. Dated the day before the 2023 will. I took a photo. Then I folded the letter and slid it into my coat pocket. They buried her wishes in the one place they thought no one would look, her own handwriting, I whispered. I didn't say goodbye to Rin. I didn't need to. He was already losing, and we both knew it. That evening, I drove to the rehab center. The hallways were quiet. Soft jazz played from an overhead speaker. I hated it. When I walked into Grandma's room, I expected her to be asleep, but her eyes were open, focused, a little foggy, but present. Hi, I said gently, sitting beside her. She blinked slowly, then whispered, "You found it, didn't you?" I nodded, biting my lip. "I found all of it." Her hand searched for mine. When I gave it, she squeezed, not hard, but enough. "Then let's tell them everything." Grandma leaned on my arm as we stepped into the courtroom. She was lighter than I remembered, but her grip was steady. Her eyes met mine once, just before we passed the front bench. There was no fear in her gaze, just clarity. The judge looked over his glasses as we approached. "Mrs. Bennington, are you able to speak for yourself today?" "I can," Grandma said, her voice raspy but firm. I stayed quiet because I thought silence was safer, but it almost killed me. You could have heard a pin drop. I was told if I spoke up, I'd be taken away from my home, away from my granddaughter. I believed them. I let them convince me that fear was love. She paused, looked at Rin, seated at the defense table with his lawyer. His posture was stiff, lips tight. Veronica sat behind him, arms folded. "I didn't want to be a burden," she continued, "so I signed what they gave me, even when I didn't understand it, even when it hurt." The judge nodded slowly. "Thank you, Mrs. Bennington." I rose and plugged in the flash drive. "Your Honor, this is newly obtained footage from the gas station where my grandmother was found." The monitor flickered to life. The room darkened. Every pair of eyes turned forward. Grainy footage, headlights cutting through snow. A dark SUV pulling into the gas station. The driver's door opened. Rin stepped out, glanced around, opened the passenger side. Grandma climbed out slowly, in her nightgown, barefoot. She turned toward the building. The SUV drove away. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The timestamp at the bottom, January 25th, 11:46 p.m. The judge leaned back. "Did your client deny being at this location on that night?" Rin's lawyer stammered. "He doesn't recall being there, but—" I didn't let him finish. "Your Honor, may I present additional documentation?" "Go ahead." I handed over a printed copy of the property transfer notary document. "This is the will used to transfer all of my grandmother's assets to Mr. Blackwood. The metadata shows the notary seal was altered after the document was signed." A man appeared on the monitor, clean-cut, remote background. "I'm Peter Glassman, digital forensic analyst. The timestamp on the notary file was manipulated to match January 18th, a date when Mrs. Bennington was under hospital sedation." The judge's tone dropped an octave. "So she could not have been mentally or physically capable of signing." "Correct, sir," the analyst said. The judge nodded once, jaw set. "This court finds probable cause to proceed with further legal action against Mr. Blackwood for perjury, elder abuse, and document fraud." He slammed the gavel once. "All control of Mrs. Bennington's assets is revoked, effective immediately. Temporary guardianship is awarded to Ms. Serrano, pending a full investigation." I barely heard the murmurs as bailiffs moved toward Rin. "You'll regret this," Rin hissed, lunging toward me. He didn't make it 2 steps before being held back. Veronica remained seated, unmoved. She didn't say a word. Outside, the air felt different. Cameras surrounded me, but this time I didn't run. "Ms. Serrano, do you believe the justice system failed your grandmother?" "Yes," I said plainly. "The system didn't protect her, but we fought, and now it must answer to us." Clips of the hearing played across local and national news within the hour. That night, APS confirmed a full audit of Rin's dealings with other elderly clients. Heritage Management LLC was being unspooled, slowly but surely. It wasn't about our family anymore. It was about every daughter, every granddaughter who had ever been told to stop asking questions. At 10:47 p.m., my inbox pinged, an encrypted email. Inside, a spreadsheet of properties linked to Heritage Management, names of elderly clients, dates of modified wills. Notes like POA override successful and no family contact. The subject line, "Your grandmother wasn't the only one." I stared at the screen, throat tight. This was bigger than us, and it wasn't over yet. The house smelled like dust and disinfectant. I stood in the doorway for a long time, keys dangling from my fingers, unsure if I was ready to step into what used to be a home. The court order naming me temporary guardian had come through that morning. Rin's name was no longer on any legal document, but his shadow was still here. The living room was exactly as we'd left it the day APS intervened. Furniture draped in white cloths, as if mourning. A faint trace of her perfume lingered in the air, something floral and old-fashioned. I walked toward the kitchen, pausing only when I opened the fridge. Empty. Not just the absence of groceries, no condiments, no water bottle, no medications. The interior was bone white, humming like it was trying to convince itself it still had a purpose. The cabinets weren't much better. One dusty can of soup, a bottle of expired vitamins, a broken box of saltines. The cold air didn't just hit my face, I muttered aloud. It hit my gut. She hadn't been living here, she'd been enduring it. I turned toward the window over the sink and noticed something sticking out of the side of the mailbox just beyond it. I walked outside, pulled it loose, a yellowed envelope, bent, curled at the corners. My name was written in slanted cursive. Makena. I slid my thumb under the seal and opened it gently. No return address. No stamp. It had never been mailed. Back inside, I sat down on the plastic-covered couch and unfolded the letter. "If you're reading this," it began, "I hope it means you found the truth before it found you." Her handwriting wobbled across the page, but was unmistakably hers. I didn't know how to make peace with what I'd done. I stayed quiet out of fear, yes, but also guilt. I thought if I let Rin take control, it might make up for the ways I'd failed him, the way I enabled him. But I see now that I was only extending the damage. She went on, apologizing for the moments I had felt invisible, the times she had stood behind Rin, even when she should have stood by me. "I was proud of you," she wrote, "always. But I didn't know how to say it without making him feel less." That line broke something open in me. Tears welled up, but I didn't sob. I folded the letter carefully and slid it into the back of my notebook, right under the section I had labeled, "Things They Tried to Erase." I spent the next 2 hours walking room to room. I didn't touch everything. I didn't need to. I knew what I was looking for. Old photos came off the wall, mostly group shots where I'd been cropped out or conveniently not present. I left up the ones of her alone, her smiling in the garden, her playing piano, her laughing with me in one of the few pictures I actually remembered being taken. I called a local cleaning service. "I'm not looking for a deep clean," I told them. "Just help decluttering. Let's make it livable again." In her bedroom, I found a photo of us from when I was maybe 8. We were kneeling in the garden, planting daffodils. I was holding a tiny shovel, and she was guiding my hand. I framed it, hung it in the hallway where the old mirror used to be. "I used to think legacy was what we left in our will," I whispered. "But it's what we fight to protect, in moments no one else sees." I opened my journal and wrote a note to myself. No matter how strong they seem, silence and shame cannot stand against love with proof. Later that day, I made a copy of the unsent letter. I sent it to APS, not as evidence, as closure, as truth reclaimed. We weren't hiding anymore. That evening, my phone rang. The DA's office. "Mrs. Serrano?" a voice asked. "With your testimony and the contents of Mrs. Bennington's letter, we have a strong basis for maximum sentencing." There was a pause. "Do you want to be present when the charges are read?" I looked at the framed photo down the hallway, her hands over mine, in the dirt. "Yes," I said, "but not for vengeance." Another pause. "For the record." After the call ended, I sat down at the table and opened my laptop. The document was already titled, "What We Choose to Keep, A Story of Unerasing." The courtroom was packed. The weight of everything that had led to this moment pressed in from every wall, but I didn't let it fold me. I walked beside Grandma, guiding her slowly down the center aisle. Her hand trembled inside mine, not from fear, just age. Rin stood at the front, jaw clenched, flanked by a public defender who looked like he hadn't slept. I didn't feel triumph. I felt something heavier, slower, the kind of relief that doesn't celebrate. It just exhales. The prosecutor read the charges one by one. Fraud, elder abuse, obstruction, evidence tampering. The courtroom remained hushed, except for the furious scribbling of reporters. Every word felt earned. Then the judge spoke. "This court does not just protect assets," he said. "It protects dignity, the dignity of those who've been pushed aside, made to feel disposable. Mrs. Bennington, what happened to you was not just illegal, it was inhuman." He turned to Rin. "For your actions, this court sentences you to 12 years in federal prison with no parole eligibility for the first 5. There were audible gasps. Rin didn't move. Veronica, sitting behind him, looked forward but blinked slowly, as if bracing for the final blow. I stayed quiet, gripping Grandma's hand. Her fingers curled tighter around mine. The judge banged his gavel. "Court is adjourned." Outside, the cameras surged. I shook my head when they approached. "No statements today," I said. "The story doesn't belong to headlines anymore." 2 months later, we moved. A small home in Billings, Montana. Nothing flashy, but bright. Full of windows and gentle morning light. The kind of place you could breathe in. Spring came early that year. The yard had thawed. The old flower beds waited like blank pages. I pulled on gloves and helped Grandma into the garden. The sun was warm, but not harsh. Earth smelled like life. "You know," she said, easing herself onto a small stool beside me, "these used to be my mother's favorite." "Then let's give them space to grow again," I replied. We planted daffodils. Yellow, stubborn, beautiful. We didn't say much, just worked. Side by side. Soil clung to our hands, and for once, I didn't mind the mess. Inside, the mantel held new photos. Her smiling by the window, me in the kitchen, the 2 of us in front of the courthouse after the ruling, proof that we had survived, proof that we had chosen to rebuild, not retreat. My journal sat open on the kitchen table. I picked up my pen and wrote, "What survives isn't what was never broken, it's what grew back, despite the damage." A few days later, I uploaded a video, just my face, calm, no music, no graphics. "For anyone who's ever been cut out of their own family photo," I began. I told them what happened, not all the gritty details, but enough. I shared Grandma's voice, her letter, a clip of the courtroom footage, the image of her in the garden with a trowel and a soft smile. "You're not too much," I said. "You're not invisible. You are someone's reason to keep going." At the end, a still image, the daffodils blooming behind us. "Every silence you break," I whispered, "can save someone else." The comments came fast. "My aunt died in silence. Thank you for speaking for her. You gave me the courage to ask questions. I was the invisible one. I'm not anymore." I replied to a few. Then I closed the laptop. The fight was over. But the voice, that would keep going. And that was enough. That morning, I poured coffee and stepped onto the porch. The daffodils danced gently in the breeze. Grandma stood by the edge of the yard, watering slowly, her movements steady and peaceful. Even in her frailty, she looked grounded. I leaned against the post, watching her. The wind was soft, the earth forgiving. Even the coldest ground can bloom again if you refuse to let it stay frozen. We made it, and we're not going back.